welcome back to the next episode of I Fight What You Fear with Richard Vega. And today's guest is a leading frontline doctor who has made national headlines. He is a strong conservative. He's also a godly man, a husband, a father. He is a friend of mine. He has personally helped and take care of my own family in the medical field. And I would just tell you, he is a man full of wisdom, and his name is Dr. Robin Armstrong. Thank you, sir, for coming on today.
All right, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, thank you. So let's just kind of give everybody a story of who you are, and I mean the journey of your life is a beautiful journey, and I know it probably hasn't been easy for you, but nothing ever is in life, is it?
Right, absolutely. Well, so I was born about 25 minutes south of here in Texas City. In fact, where I started my medical practice about 25 years ago is where I was born.
Wow.
And so I didn't go very far. And so I grew up in Lamarck, went to Lamarck High School and played football there. We had a state championship team. We actually lost in the finals, but we went to the state championship and just had my high school experience was very It was a good experience, you know. It was a kind of a middle class community, multiracial, multi-ethnic, and really didn't have any racial issues at all. And so we had about literally the high school was a third Hispanic, a third African American, a third white. And we were one of the better districts in the state at Lamarck ISD. That's since changed over the years, but graduated from there.
For winning all the state championships.
Yeah, we certainly
won a whole lot of football state
certainly
championships.
known for winning state championships. Yeah, we were the first to actually take our team. We were 5A, which was at that time was the big district and the big region. I guess the big classification, and then they won all those state championships as 4A teams. So we like to kind of brag on that and say we were the bigger school and played against the Planos and the Alitos and all those, the North Shores and all those teams that you hear about now. But yeah, so I graduated from there, went to Texas A&M University, and I was there from 87 to 91. And was a microbiology major there, and at Texas A&M is where I gave my heart to the Lord, and I think that's where my kind of faith journey really began. As a sophomore there at March of 1989, I prayed to receive Jesus as my Lord and Savior, and everything just sort of, I think, began at that point. And so my college experience was not like most college experiences. I mean, we would, people talk about the chicken at Texas A&M and College Station, and so we went and ministered at the chicken. I mean, we went and passed out tracts and led people to the Lord and just sort of ministered the gospel of Jesus, at bars in College Station as a college student. Right. We'd go out every Friday and minister on campus, and I actually got involved more politically at that time. I became president of my residence hall, and we started started just ministering to people in our residence hall, me and my roommate. And so we were very active and evangelical, and we were just trying to share the heart of God because, in college we saw a lot of hurting teenagers. Absolutely. And hurting young adults. And so we were just ministered to him. And so after college, I kind of a little bit torn about what I was going to do. I started off college thinking I'm going to go to medical school, but then that changed. I went on a couple of mission trips right after college. I went to Africa a couple of times, and then I thought, well, maybe I want to go to the mission field. And so God sort of worked on my heart there, and we actually ministered in a Somali refugee camp.
Oh, wow.
In eastern Kenya. And so when our troops were sent over to Somalia, probably a few months after I had gotten back from there. And so it was a real rough time because they were in
89, 90.
Yeah,
that
that's
area,
exactly
that's
right.
when Black Hawk Down
Absolutely.
happened. So
that is
people
exactly
are curious
right.
on that. Go see what happened in Somalia during that time.
So we were there a few months before all that took place, and in a refugee camp in eastern Kenya, which is right there borders Somalia.
I served with two guys that were there.
Is that right?
Yeah. My warrant officer and one of my sergeants
were
involved in that down there. So
Yeah, that was some rough times. We saw a lot of stuff. We were in an operational zone, is what they called it, and so we were ministering with a lot of the organizations, Doctors Without Borders, and folks like that who were there just ministering kind of health care in this refugee camp, and in the Somali refugee camp. But we saw a lot of pretty brutal things at that time, and so it really pulled on my heart, and I thought, man, I want to go back, but God dealt with me. Said you need to go to medical school, and so I started at that point applying to medical school. Eventually went to medical school at UTMB in Galveston. I did another trip to Africa before I went to medical school. Met my wife there, and so we got married after that, and did my residency there in Galveston as well, and just started my medical practice. And so I got involved politically, started getting really involved politically in my after Bill Clinton won the presidency,
Okay.
because I was a little bit stressed out when that happened. I had looked at his lifestyle and did not think his lifestyle was very representative of what I thought was a godly lifestyle, and still don't think that. But was very distressed. Became a precinct chairman right in my local area.
Nice.
Became a city chair there. Our party had city chairs, and then became the local leader and vice chair of the party, and then was SRAC, State Republican Executive Committee, and then ran for vice chairman. Became the vice chairman of the state party.
And this is of the Republican Party.
Republican Party of Texas, yes, sir.
What made you choose to be a Republican? I mean,
Well, so what happened was when I gave my heart to the Lord, I was confronted with something. It was very obvious to me. It was the life issue, and so the life issue, it was that was just staring me in the face there. The pro-life, pro-choice, abortion issue, and so what I saw at the time was as a man of faith, as a man of God, I have to stand for life, number one. Yeah. And so irrespective of everything else that the parties agree or disagree on or whatever they stand for, life is the most important issue.
That's right.
And so I said, well, I can't really support any candidate who does not support life. And so that certainly put me in the Republican category.
Automatic.
And so automatically.
Yeah.
And then as I grew and studied the issues, I found that I had a lot more in common with the Republican Party than I did the Democrat Party, and so I left. And that was a big deal. My dad was a big Democrat in Lamarck. He was on Lamarck ISD in the school district, and he was a very vocal leader for civil rights and for African American rights at the time, and continued to be that, and knew a lot of the pastors in the area, and they're all strong Democrats today. And so I am, now I'm in a leadership position actually in the county as well. In addition to my state national leadership, party leadership, I'm also a county commissioner there.
Yeah, I mean, you literally hold very important hats, and I mean, it's just amazing. When I read your bio, I'm like, my goodness, because you're the county commissioner, you're a medical doctor, and you're also an elected official. Well, both of them are elected officials, but for the RNC, and it's just, and I don't know what else you hold, but I mean, there's so many different titles. But real quick,
Sure.
I can't imagine. Okay, so because you're raised in a Democrat home, and we're told as minorities that we're Democrats from the get-go. But then when we grow up and we start looking at our belief system, we're like, well, hold on, it doesn't add up.
Sure.
And so we make the switch. Was it easy for your family to accept you? Did you get any backlash from your friends or anything like that? Or is it just like, hey?
I haven't gotten a lot of backlash, and so my personality is such that even if I did, I wouldn't necessarily see it or pay attention to it. One thing that God really taught me early on in my faith walk is to never carry offense. And I know my pastor would always say, an offended person can be controlled. And so it's easy to control someone who is offended. And I see, whole communities are controlled by their offense, by something they're angry with that's happened in the past. And so since I don't carry offense, I tend to forget things. I'm very merciful towards people. So in reality, I if there were some conflict or some pushback, I wouldn't even see it. I wouldn't pay any attention to
Right.
it. They might say something negative, and then I just move on and bless them, and move on. Bless those who curse you, bless those. And so I really don't pay attention to that because, life's too short, and I've got a lot of people that I love, and they love me, and I know who they are. And so I am okay with a little pushback. It's okay. That's the way life is. But I really haven't had a lot. I think also growing up in the community as well has helped because they know me. I'm Robin. I'm the boy that they chastised when he was misbehaving as a kid.
Right.
And so they know who I am, and they know my heart.
Right.
And I'm a physician in the community as well. So I've taken care of thousands of people over the last 20 years in my community. Right. And so they say, Robin's a Republican, and I don't agree with that, but I know him.
Right.
And I know his heart.
That's right.
And I know what he believes. And so I really haven't had a lot of pushback, I think, for those reasons.
That's good.
I've gotten more pushback from people who don't know me.
I think everyone that I run into, they love you. Like everyone loves Robin. I'm like, and people are like, hey, you're down there in South Houston area, right? Do you know Dr. Robin Armstrong? I was like, yeah, I got him. It's like, man, he's a wonderful man. It's like, dude, I mean, everyone loves you.
Well, that's a blessing. I mean, that's just a blessing of the Lord. I really just give that over to God. It's a, and I really believe that if I'm standing for what's right, doing what's right, and God is going to protect my reputation. That's right. He's going to have my back. I'm going to be sort of in the shelter of his wings. I just as long as I'm standing firm, doing what's right, doing what I think is right. I don't do everything right, but I certainly try to.
Right. Absolutely.
And God sees that effort, and I think that He honors that. He honors that, and so long as I stay humble. And I know where my I know where my help comes from. I know where all that stuff is just comes straight from the Lord, because I live with me, and so right all the time.
Right, that's right. Every day.
And so I know the mistakes I've made, and I know the misdirections I've made, and I was just I guess a couple of weeks ago, I was just thanking the Lord for just having my back and just covering me, even when I make a mistake, do the wrong thing, say the wrong thing. Right. It was just thanking the Lord just for having my back, because I'll tell you, just if you're doing what's right, and God knows your heart, and if you're doing, He'll cover you.
That's right.
Even the mistakes you make. I've made a lot of mistakes, but thank God, God's covered that, and so it just allows me to just walk in confidence and faith. I can say things and do things that maybe some people can't say and do, just because I know that God will cover me. Amen. Even if someone doesn't agree with it, that's okay. Right. And so I thank the Lord for that, for protecting my reputation, because I don't have very much to do with that. I mean, God's good.
Yeah, He's very good. So you're at UTMB, you become a doctor, and when you meet your wife and you start practicing medicine here locally. Mm-hmm. And just take us through that journey of filtering through, and then you got your own practice.
Correct. So I finished residency at UTMB and then started practicing. I started working with a company, and for everyone who has a vision to start their own business. I'll tell you. I'll give you some advice that a good friend of mine gave me. He said, so I was starting my practice. I was working for a national company, a hospitalist company. So my practice, I'm internal medicine trained, and so I do hospital care. So I take care of patients in hospitals, and we also have a large nursing home practice. And so there's 35 of us now. So now it's Armstrong Medical Group. And so I own the group and with a couple of other physicians. And so so the advice I would give anybody thinking about starting their own business, God telling you to start your own business, do it. This advice that this gentleman gave me, he said, Robin, the only thing you're going to regret when you go out and do your own practice on your own is you're going to regret not doing it sooner. And he's absolutely right. I mean, the only thing I regret about going and doing my own practice, owning my own practice, was just not doing it 10 years sooner.
Wow.
10 years earlier.
How long you been in your own practice?
So, gosh, we've probably, I've owned Armstrong Medical Group for about 7 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
7, 8 years. And so, and I wish I had done it 10 years earlier.
Prior. Yeah,
10 years
absolutely.
earlier. And so I think that just, and so it's been a wonderful thing. It protected me. Owning my own company and business actually protected me during COVID as well.
Really?
So it allowed for me to be able to do the right thing and not fear, losing my livelihood.
Right.
Because in COVID, and so, we were the people don't know this, but unless you've been to one of my talks. So I have a large nursing home practice, and so we actually were the first nursing home in the United States to treat a large number of patients with hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, and zinc. And so we made national headlines when we did that. And this was in March of 2020. We treated these patients for COVID in March of 2020, which is very early in the pandemic.
It's very right
very
when
early.
it started getting crazy. And
Exactly.
guys, you need to listen up right here because this is very important. You have a doctor who stood on what was right and what he knew medically. And I also believe the Holy Spirit was guiding you at that time.
Absolutely.
And because your experiences through that were great for your patients, but not good for the medical of what they were trying to push.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
you were definitely in the middle of a spiritual warfare, and so just take us through that because
Sure.
frontline doctor for real.
Right, absolutely. So we were in March of 2020. So I'm a hospital physician, and so we were seeing patients come in to the hospital with COVID, and they were really, really sick. A lot of them were coming on ventilators, and they were the patients that we would see, people who had comorbidities, had other medical problems, and then also the elderly. And so we were treating them with hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, and zinc. Everyone was treating them with that. Every hospital in the country was, including the hospitals where I go to now. We go to like 9 different hospitals here. So we were treating them with that medication regimen, and so, but it wasn't working. Because it turns out it was way late at that point. And so you have to treat people with that regimen early on, not late. And so that's what that's what the evidence tells us now. At the time, we did not know that. So we were all using that. And so I thought, we had an outbreak at our nursing home. One day, we had some physical therapists that had developed COVID, and literally had 86 people in our nursing facility that developed COVID. And so now remember, this is a nursing home, and so we've got the elderly, they're sick,
Wow.
they're infirm, they're not healthy, many of them are bed-bound. And so this is the highest risk population.
Right.
This is the population that COVID was taking out at that time.
Right.
And so I thought, wow, we're using these 3 medications that are all pills. They're not IV medications that are hard to give. They're not expensive medications. And so we thought, azithromycin, hydroxychloroquine, and zinc, why don't we use these in our nursing home patients is what we thought. I thought. It didn't seem like a novel concept. It seemed very simple. I've actually taken hydroxychloroquine before when I went on my missionary trips. So I had personal use of it.
Right.
I'd taken it myself. I knew it was very safe.
Right.
Azithromycin is a Z-Pack, normal medication. Everybody's taking a Z-Pack. That's safe. And zinc is a vitamin, so that's safe as well. So I figured, why don't we try treating them with the regimen that every hospital was using at that time? Why don't we try treating them in the nursing home with this? didn't seem like a real novel concept, but turns out it was. Right. No one had ever done it before in the United States.
Wow.
We were the first to do that in the United States, and we did it. We monitored the patients very closely. We basically set up a MASH unit, like a unit, a hospital unit in the nursing home. We rounded on them every day. We took meticulous records. I'd actually Dan Patrick, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, has been a friend for a while. He helped me kind of procure the hydroxychloroquine in the drugs that we needed, because we needed a lot because we were treating 86 different people with it.
Absolutely.
And so we got the medications we needed. We got the zinc. We got the azithromycin, and everything we needed. Started treating them on this 5-day treatment regimen. We lost one patient to COVID.
Wow.
One patient to COVID. This was unheard of. I was getting calls from the governor, from the lieutenant governor. How are the patients doing? Are they doing well? It's like, we're still treating them. Let's kind of play this out. And someone remarked to me, and I believe it was the governor, said, Robin, if this is effective, this works, then this should be the standard of care for every nursing home in the United States. So that's what should have happened.
Right.
It's what should have happened. But it didn't happen. We were preparing to write a paper, an observation paper, just to put that out, because you can't share that, right? You can't put that light under a bushel. That needed to be shared because it was good information,
right,
that people could use and say, well, if this happens in your nursing home, this is what you treat them with.
Right.
But it was just an observational study. It wasn't a study that was designed to prove anybody that it worked. It was just our observations.
Correct.
That's all it was.
But 86 patients.
86 patients.
Hello,
absolutely.
It produced results.
Right, absolutely. But we were attacked. By National Public Radio, NPR. We were attacked by the New York Times, the Washington Post. Rolling Stone magazine actually did an article on our nursing home treatment. Wow. And the line of reasoning, what the headline said was that we were experimenting on the elderly, and that's what it was. And so we got attacked by the national press, and like I say, the people in the local community were happy. Mm-hmm.
You're saving lives.
Exactly.
You're doing what you were designed to do.
Absolutely. The family was happy. The local community was happy. The Houston Chronicle wasn't happy, of course.
Imagine that.
Or the Galveston Daily News, they weren't happy. But certainly the community was. And so now, while that was going on, I'll tell you, Pastor, if we had lost patients, and so these are elderly patients, so these patients could die from anything.
Correct.
If we had lost a large number of patients during that time, I have no doubt they would have taken me out of that place in handcuffs. Because that's exactly what they were. They were trying to shut down. I was confused as a physician. Now, I'd been involved in politics for a long time. I was actually the national committee man during this time. And so I knew politics and pretty politically savvy, but I was confused at why we were being attacked, because I thought, Democrats, liberals have grandparents too. I mean, they want them to live as well. Right. So why are they attacking us with this? I figured it out months later. There was 2 reasons why we were attacked. Reason number 1 is because the society in general, people, the pharmaceuticals, the people's pushing this whole narrative. They needed people to fear COVID. They needed people to fear it.
Right.
And if people did not fear COVID, then they would go on with their lives. They wouldn't follow the government's recommendations. They wouldn't follow the World Health Organization or the CDC's recommendations because they didn't fear it.
That's right.
And they would say, what are you talking about? We're not doing that. Mm-hmm. This is not a problem for us.
They had their agenda.
Absolutely.
Push shots.
Absolutely. They needed people to fear it. And number 2, probably was the biggest reason, was for the vaccines, the shots that they wanted to give everybody. And so what that was all about was if there is any medication, if there's a study out there, or if there's anything showing that there's a medication that could potentially treat COVID, which is what we were trying to do, and that meant, and it would have been at least some marginal evidence that it was effective, then you could not get any medication under emergency use authorization. And so the vaccines are still under emergency use authorization. They've still not been fully FDA approved.
Really?
And so the vaccines had to come under emergency use authorization. It's the only way you could use them at that time.
Wow.
And if a study came out that, hey, these drugs might be effective in treating COVID, it's illegal to have anything come out under emergency use authorization. Because by definition, emergency use authorization is you have no cure, you have nothing to treat it, and so you have to do this without it going through the normal course of study that you would normally put drugs under.
Wow. Wow.
And that was probably the real reason why they had to shut everything we were doing down.
Absolutely. Because your observation study proves 100 times that this works, even though it's under observation. I'm sorry. An observation of 86 people and the loss of life of one at the highest people group of basically to not survive.
Correct.
They're up in age, they're fighting all kinds of health issues. Most of them are bedridden, like you said, which we know that itself is just, you're dying basically. And here's a disease that comes along and it's wiping people out from respiratory issues and XYZ. So, but yet you keep all of them alive by using this regimen that you've done yourself and you trusted.
Right.
And now you're coming under attack for experimenting on people. Which you took this, a regimen like this was taken back in the early 90s. I mean, this has been around for decades and decades and decades. So it's trusted.
Right.
It's been in, I don't know how many studies, and then they come after you because they say you're experimenting with people, but and I'm not saying this like in a bad way, but you should have been praised for saving lives. Right? And saying, hey, listen, this guy's, we're in the middle of a pandemic, a global pandemic.
Right.
They could have came in and said, hey, man, this guy figured something out. Look at this leading doctor. Him and his staff have really done a great observation. Let's try this in another area.
Sure.
Does it work?
Right.
And allow research to take itself further in the medical field.
Absolutely. Well, you're saying exactly. So this is what Dr. Peter McCullough, who's a good friend, Dr. Richard Urso is a good friend, and Stella Emanuel, and all these doctors, Simone Gold, all these folks who we've all become really good friends. Dr. Joseph Ladapo, who actually is a Surgeon General in Florida now. They're all good friends. All we were saying was exactly what you just said. So I wasn't saying that my observation study proved anything definitively, but all I was saying is that why don't we study this in an objective way, in a scientific way, using the scientific method. Just study it. All we want, put it up to the studies. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. That's fine. I'm fine with that. What I did know when we went in to treat these patients with this regimen is that I was going to do no harm. And that is the first thing that we learn in medicine is do no harm. I knew that we were not going to harm these people in any way because I knew these drugs were safe. And so what I said to myself was these drugs are safe. Why don't we try them? They may not work, but at least I know we're not going to do any harm to them.
Right.
And so it's really funny because there was a Lancet study that came out. And when all this was happening, I was watching the news closely because we were in the news.
Right.
And they were using my name and throwing my name around in a negative way, the mainstream media was. And so I was watching news, and every time there was some evidence that would come out that it was effective, there would always be a big study that would come out that said, no, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so there was a big Lancet study. And so Lancet is one of the most respected scientific journals in the world. Okay. Literally in the world, Lancet. And so there's a big Lancet study, and what this study was it was a multi-institutional. So what they said they had done was that they had gotten information from many different countries, many different hospitals, institutions, and what they had come up with, it was a retrospective study. This was a study where they looked back at all these COVID patients and who had gotten hydroxychloroquine, and what they found was that hydroxychloroquine was dangerous and that it killed people. That's what the Lancet study showed. Okay, one of the most respected journals in the United States showed this. Now we questioned that. And we were like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. But it's kind of hard to question Lancet, right? Okay. Because it has such a proven history. It's been around for hundreds of years. One of the most respected scientific journals in medicine. 2 weeks later, the authors of that study withdrew the result. They said
wow.
they said that all of this information that was supposedly gathered, that they had paid this company to gather, was all fraudulent data.
Wow.
So the actual authors, the authors who put their name on this study, withdrew the study. Okay? And so, but I'll tell you what happened was the media never played the withdrawal of the study.
No, of course not.
I mean, the media, and so when the authors of the study say we have to withdraw this because it's fraudulent data, they use fraudulent data, and so none of what this study says is wrong. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Certainly for a respected journal like Lancet. And so what happened was the first reports came out that hydroxychloroquine bad, kills people. That was headline news.
Yeah.
And you heard about that everywhere. Every news outlet carried that. When they pulled the study 2 weeks later, no one heard about it. No one heard about it. There are literally doctors today who are using that Lancet study as evidence that hydroxychloroquine is not effective.
Oh, wow.
In COVID and was not effective. Many doctors don't even have the information that the study was pulled by the authors 2 weeks later.
Wow.
So it seemed like it was a spiritual battle, and it seemed like it certainly was there were people out there at very high levels that were trying to deceive the public. And they wanted they wanted the church lockdowns. They wanted the business lockdowns. They wanted to be able to change our election law to defeat a president at the time, and that's what they did. They used COVID to relax election laws, to expand mail ballots, and they fraudulently defeated President Trump because of that. I mean, that's just a fact. And so he says that the election was stolen. Well, I'm not sure that I don't think you need voting machines not functioning right for the election. I think the fact that they sent all these mail ballots out to people, and when they got so many returned, we don't know who was filling those ballots out.
That's right.
They tried to do it here in Harris County, but they were sued and they were stopped. And had they been successful at doing this in Harris County, mailing out ballots to the plan was to mail out ballots to every registered voter in Harris County. Just mail them out. And we had to do it because it was dangerous to go to the polls because of COVID. And so had they been able to do that, then Joe Biden would have won Texas. And we would have lost our statewide that were on the ballot that time. Republicans would have lost all up and down the ballot because you would have had all these mail ballots filled out. Yep. Fortunately, our Supreme Court, Ken Paxton and some local leaders here in Harris County actually sued and stopped him from mailing those ballots out.
Yeah, I tell you what, Ken Paxton has been a force, hasn't he?
Sure, absolutely.
I mean, he's definitely walking in his calling like you. I'm grateful for men like you stepping up to the plate. What was it like, you see this great you see this great observation. I mean, for me, I'd imagine you'd been happy, right? You're ecstatic, like it's working.
Right.
And this is what you went to school for, is to help save lives. And in a global pandemic, you're trying to understand what is going on. I mean, you are like, everyone's your friend at this point, right? But when the media comes down on you, you talked about like you could have left in handcuffs. Like the worry of that, I mean, because that doesn't leave. Like you're at work, you're dealing with that. You go home, you're dealing with that. On the way back and forth, you're dealing with that, right? What was that like on those transitions of just like, my goodness?
Well, it was really difficult. What I haven't mentioned is that the Texas Medical Board actually, someone anonymously filed a complaint. I suspect it was a media outlet that did. And so they investigated for 9 months.
Wow.
We didn't have a hearing for 9 months. And so we spent, upwards of $40,000 defending myself and what we had done. And so that happened as well. And that's part of that's the problem with that is the bureaucratic state, the bureaucracy. The folks who are on the medical board are generally good people. They're appointed by Republicans. And so when it came before the full board as a hearing, they just threw it out. I had no punishment at all, no fine, no nothing. I was not going to accept any punishment either because I didn't do anything wrong. So we were geared up for the fight. But the problem is that the people that are in that agency, the bureaucracies, they're all Democrats, and they were all anti. They were all against what we did. And so they were throwing every accusation at us. We'd get a letter, defend this. What are you doing here? Why'd you do this? Why'd you do this? And so it took a while before it got to sort of the people that are reasonable minded. But anyway, so it took a long time. But going through that, so that was on us as well because that's my livelihood. If I lose my license and I can't practice medicine, and so all of this that was going on, we were thinking about. Lord, we were praying for our patients. What we did as a family, and I've got 4 sons and my wife, and so we prayed every day. We literally prayed every day. Amen. We prayed for all. There was like 100 or so patients in that facility at that time. We prayed for every person in that facility every day. Amen. I mean, we called their names out. Me and my sons and my wife, we called them out. We prayed for everybody at that facility. We prayed for wisdom and guidance, and we prayed every single day that God's covering would be over us because we were attacked. We got death threats. Thank God for the Friendswood police at the time. They actually would send someone that would just sit outside of our house. At times because literally I got phone calls, people saying, you're Joseph Mengele, the Nazi war criminal that did a bunch of, he's a physician, did a bunch of experiments on the Jews in Auschwitz in the concentration camps. So they called me that, saying I was experimenting, and it was horrible. And so the left can be very cruel and they can be very, very violent. And so, but as we see with all these recent shootings, but that's a whole nother story. But I'll tell you, so while we were going through this, I mean, we were prayerful and we just sort of, put our heads down and worked, but we're very, very prayerful. I mean, God certainly gives, when you're going through something like that and you don't know what the outcome's going to be, you don't know whether you're going to lose your license or not. Right. You don't know whether a lot of these people are going to die or not, from COVID or from a stroke or from a heart attack. You don't know whether that's going to happen or not. You just pray. And give it over to God. That's all you can do, really. That's right. Because the end point is uncertain. You don't know what's going to happen, and so we just prayed and put our heads down and worked. And God really, really worked it out. He really did. God worked it out in our favor, and through all the hearings and everything we had to go through for that, God really, really worked it out in our favor. And I think that in the community. Actually, we were probably more respected than we were previously, because I took care of a lot of, so African Americans who there now may not agree with my Republicanism, they certainly know what we did for their family members, right? And how we treated them and how we stuck our neck out for them, and so it was a real blessing. It was they did someone arranged for a little, it was COVID, so we weren't, doing the social distancing and all that stuff. But they arranged for a parade. They did a sort of a car parade where people just kind of drove by the nursing home and had signs and stuff. So they did that. Fox 26 local here in Houston was great. There's a lady that really was a big supporter of ours, and she came out to the nursing home, did an interview with us on Fox 26. I had the opportunity to be a grand marshal to the first NASCAR race that actually that took place after COVID, and so I was one of the grand marshals. It was me and some other frontline physicians. And so there were people who actually appreciated what we did as well. And that's kind of the people you focus on rather than focusing on the negativity. Yeah. And so if anything, I've learned how to really kind of focus and redirect, not focus on the negativity, but focus on those who are being positive. Right. And so that was good.
Yeah, there's just so much to unpack from the story, So after you get through this, you beat the case, you're going through all the trials, and basically they said, okay, we're going to leave you alone. Right. How has your work taken you now? Like, where your medical profession? You said that your business actually protected you. How did that?
So what happened was, so what I meant by that is that it's so owning my own practice, and so had I worked for a company at this time, I mean, they probably would have fired me
Oh yeah,
because of all the negative publicity.
100%.
They probably would have fired me, and so I probably would have been without a job. I don't know that they would have done that, but they probably would have.
Yeah.
Probably would have.
They were firing nurses for not getting shots.
Sure,
So,
sure,
I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah, you would have been gone.
And then the whole vaccine, that whole deal, they were forcing everybody to get the vaccine. And so what happens, we take care of a lot of patients in these hospitals. So the hospitals have become a little bit dependent on us to take care of their patients. So the last thing they needed to happen was for me to not be on staff at their hospital. And since my name's on the contract, if I'm not on staff, then our whole group would leave. They had to have these patients cared for.
Right.
And the patients were being well cared for by our team. And so we became a little bit where they couldn't really get rid of us, because at the time they kind of needed us to take care of the patients.
Yeah.
And so I think that so owning my own company was really protective in that way as well. I didn't get the vaccine. I did not get the vaccine. And then also just while we were making those decisions, we had the freedom to make those decisions.
Right.
that we wouldn't have otherwise had the freedom
That's
to,
right.
to do. So owning my own practice, and that really gave us a lot more freedom.
Man,
to
God
do
knew
the
what he was
to do
doing.
the right thing. God certainly knew what he was doing, and so it really is a powerful testimony of God's goodness for sure.
I like that you said, I had a thought. No, you had a whisper.
Sure.
You had a whisper, and that thought came, and you were like, "Man, let me do all my checks and balances, and this is safe. This is safe. This is safe. We've done this, done that. You know what? Let's try it."
Sure.
And it's worked. So now have you beaten all that? Now has your practice taken off? Has it?
Yeah, we've grown a lot. I mean, we've grown a lot. We've got a great reputation in the community. We've grown a lot. We're working hard. We're needing to hire more physicians. We just hired 4 physicians and a nurse practitioner, so we're waiting on them to come on board. So we're growing. I mean, we're growing a whole lot, and so it's good. Because one thing about it is that now what we see is people don't trust the medical profession any longer because of what happened during that time, and it's a shame. It's a shame. Physicians, nurses have been one of the more noble, professions in the United States, but now that's not the case. People don't trust it anymore, and with good reason. And so I think that people have a lot of confidence in our group, in our care, and so I think that has allowed us to grow and to do well, have a good reputation in the community. The people know that we're going to stand and do the right thing, even when the government's telling us to do something else.
That's right.
We're going to do the right thing for them and by them. And so I think that is that's something that we're very happy about and proud of. And so I think that has allowed our practice to grow as well. We have a great reputation.
How many doctors do you guys have?
We've got about 35 now.
Oh, wow.
Yes, there's a lot. There's a lot of us, and so we're kind of all over the city.
Yeah.
And that's doctors, nurse practitioners, and PAs.
Do y'all see just people locally, or do y'all see people
Well, we go
like now? It's just
about
like you can call and do internet stuff and all kinds.
Yeah,
of
about
stuff.
as far north as we don't do any telemedicine stuff now. About as far north as Pasadena. I think we go to one of the facilities there.
Okay.
But then we're mostly down south. We're probably more in southern Harris County, and then in Galveston County.
Okay.
And so so we have a lot of facilities there. And so it's going well. I mean, it's going really well. We're probably we need more people, so we're probably more busy than we than we can stand right now. But we're waiting on some more folks to come in, some of the cavalry to come in and get them hired. And so that's kind of where we are now. Our practice is going well, and like I say, it's growing a lot. But we really are. now I am I've gotten really involved with the Republican National Committee as well. I've kind of I've been on there since 2012.
Oh, wow.
And so I've been on the Republican National Committee for 12 years, and so I don't feel that old, but I've been on there for a long time, and so I'm now one of the more senior members on the RNC, even though a lot of the members on the RNC are a lot older than I am. So I've got a little more influence, and so which is good. I'm on the Faith Engagement. I actually chair the Faith Engagement Committee, which is engaging folks all over the country, trying to get people of faith involved in politics. I've always believed that when we if people of faith are not involved and engaged, then there's a vacuum there. And ungodly people will fill that vacuum.
That's right.
There's a vacuum of leadership, and so I believe that as faith people, and I thank you and appreciate the work that you do on that front as well. As faith people, we should have faith people, in the arts. We should have them creating movies, creating cartoons. We should have them in the sciences. We should have physicians and physics and aerospace people. We should have Christian people who are involved in the legal system and law and at the Supreme Court level. We should have them involved in hospitality and in owning hotels and serving our food at in restaurants. We need to have people of faith in every aspect of life.
Yes.
And so I believe that we need to have songwriters and musicians, and we need to have people of faith at the highest levels, excelling at the very highest levels of every aspect of life.
Amen.
And when we don't have that, then it's a failure. And I believe in politics, a lot of Christian people have abdicated that responsibility, have given it over to someone else. And a lot of pastors have not stepped up to the plate. And this is why we have, epidemic of pornography. This is why we have an epidemic of just, men not knowing if they're women and women not knowing if they're men. There's confusion in a society that is without God and that is without men and women of faith to lead the way. I know during COVID, I had a lot of conversation with our pastor. It was 2 weeks to stop the spread, right? And soon after that, I said, that's the government's call. That was the government's call. I was telling my pastor, we got to open up. We have to open up. We can't stay closed because pastors and men of faith have to be at the lead the way.
That's right.
And because spiritually, and I believe that if our country is going to be saved, if we're going to turn away from going the way of the Roman Empire, from destruction, if we're going to turn away from internal moral decay and destruction, then pastors are going to have to take the lead. And if pastors won't take the lead, then we as a nation will fail.
Yeah.
And if pastors don't take the lead, I believe that God will hold them accountable for that. Here, the last month or so, I've been studying 1st and 2nd Kings, and I love those books. And I just kind of I read through them, and now God's calling me to. I've tried to move on to something else, but God said, "No, you need to look into this." And what I see it is as it's a study of God intervening in a nation. And it tells the story of kings, who served God, and kings who didn't serve God, and it chronicles, you have Israel, and then it chronicles the breakup of Israel, and it talks about, it starts with the death of David, and Solomon became king, and how Solomon had this great wisdom and built the temple, but he had moral flaws. Yeah. That ended up breaking up the kingdom of Israel. And then you had the north kingdom, and then you had the south kingdom that was Judah and Benjamin, and then you had the north kingdom, which was Israel. And they had all these wicked kings Then they have a wicked king, then they have a good king, and then a good king, the nation would prosper. And they had a wicked king, and the nation would go into more debauchery. And eventually the Babylonians just took over. And so it's an amazing story about how God intervenes in the affairs, in the political affairs,
Yeah.
of nations in response to how they interact with him.
Right.
And I believe it's such an example of how, man, we have got to have pastors ministering to our leaders, our political leaders. We've got to have pastors calling out political leaders when they don't stand for morality and stand for righteousness. We've got to have that. Yeah. And if we don't have that, then we're not going to survive. Because I believe that pastors are the prophets. That these kings oftentimes listen to. You had Elijah and Elisha during those first or second Kings. Those were the major prophets during that time that they would seek counsel with.
Absolutely.
I believe that, and they were very prominent leaders in their nation, obviously, because the king, who was obviously very powerful, would seek their counsel. And I believe that's how we should have it. That's how it should be now.
Oh yeah.
We're not a theocracy. We're free, and we have a great constitution that's fantastic. But we really need to have pastors at the forefront, leading the movement of a free people. Because a freedom, a representative republic without morality will not survive.
No.
And so this book, and I'm studying it some more. I haven't learned everything, but I'm going through it again and studying it some more. And God's really been speaking to me a lot in studying those two books.
It's really important that pastors start rising up. People don't realize how much government is in the Bible. You look through the beginning from Genesis to Revelation. I tell people, especially pastors, Jesus come back as a king. Well, what is a king? He governs. Right. There's a high council. Right. There's the council of elders in the book of Revelations. If we look at Paul says, "I become all things to all people." What you're talking about, ministers and people of God just being in all spaces and whatever it is, science, business, whatever it is. But you look at Paul. When Paul went and he spoke on, I think it's Mars. Mount. He spoke to the governors and senators. If you go and read, he spoke to the high councils of that day in that region, and they accepted him to be able to speak, which means he had to develop the relationships and gain the trust. And then when he spoke about their pagan gods, and he talked about the unknown God. And so and then another thing I tell pastors is, listen, if you start removing the lies of what you've been told by keeping, separation of church and state, has been only, Satan has really ran with that and has held the church back. But Paul had to get to Rome for what? He needed to get to the emperor. Who's the emperor? Like, guys, who's King David? How many times have you preached on King David? He's a king. Would you call that the president of a nation? I mean, what do you want to call it? And they're like, oh my goodness. I'm like, I'm telling you, like this. David sends people into battle. In fact, when with Bathsheba, he was supposed to be in battle. He sent his troops into battle. Does not the president of the United States declare war and go into battle? When you start looking at taking off the lenses and seeing, okay, there are the government was instituted by God, and it's all throughout. Now, like what you said, when the righteous king or president rules, when the righteous mayor, when the righteous city council members, when the righteous county commissioner gets involved, that region is taken over in the spiritual realm by the godly head, and now this region can flourish in righteousness.
Absolutely.
And I believe that it is, and you hit it dead on the nail, just like Joseph and the Pharaoh. If we place men and women of God next to kings, to presidents, and allow them to be a true spiritual advisor and a true seeker of this nation and God, right? He says, seek ye the kingdom first and all his righteousness, then all these things will be added unto you. So if we get the right people next to these leaders that are praying for these decisions, for the movement I see will shift this nation and the global system back to the kingdom of heaven.
Absolutely.
You know, and you said our Constitution. Our Constitution is the longest standing Constitution in the world that the world has seen. We're coming up on 250 years of a standing Constitution. And a Constitution that has over 30% of it of biblical truth and rooted into our Declaration of Independence.
Absolutely.
And they pulled the Constitution out from that and said, hey, you know, listen, even atheists have agreed, like, hey, you know what, this is a good moral compass. Let's agree on this and let's put it into our founding documents. Let's sign it and let's go forward.
Right.
You know, because they understood. I mean, when people say, do you really believe that we're a Christian nation? I do. I believe that the Christian men and women of God have gotten so comfortable and complacent. And like you said, they have allowed the other side just to take up positions because, you know what, God's got it. No, it's you. Moses still had to be able to cross the Red Sea. Moses had to strike the rock, where he struck the rock out to allow water to come out. Right? He had to put action into it.
Absolutely.
And so we, as men and women of God, have to start stepping up and saying, we're going to go to the Capitol and stand for righteousness. Right? We're going to link on to our elected officials and say, hey, what do you need? All right? It's so important. And men and women of faith, listen. You have to preach it from the pulpit.
Absolutely.
You have to get out there and say it and stop being scared. You know what my pastor said a long time ago? He's going to preach truth from the pulpit, and he always does. And he believes one day that your churches will have to make a decision, and they're either going to have to turn in their 501c or follow it. He's like, you know, just know I'm going to preach everything out of this book, and if that says that I can't keep my 501c3, then so be it. Right. I'm obligated to preach the gospel. I'm obligated to preach truth, and
absolutely, whether
you like it or not.
Right.
You know. So, hey, tell everybody how they can get a hold of you. I know, you know, first off, you're coming up on an election, right? And let people know how they can get a hold of you or vote for you or do any of those things.
So yeah, certainly in Galveston County. I mean, I'm up again in 2026, and so I'll be having fundraisers for that coming up soon. But I will go to www.robinarmstrongtx.com.
Okay.
So www.robinarmstrongtx.com. That's my website where you can find me. Certainly, there's an email address on there. You can email me at robarmstr@hotmail.com. And so I'll read the emails. And so robarmstr@hotmail.com. And so please keep in touch. And then, and certainly we have Commissioners Court's meeting every other Monday, so you can come and see me at Commissioners Court as well. And so down in Galveston County, but I've got an election coming up at the Republican convention in Texas, because the Texas convention, where we'll have 10,000 delegates that will elect me as their national committee man to go forward for another 4-year term, and so I'm up for election for that. That'll take place this summer in May at the Republican convention in Texas here in San Antonio. And so it's important to have believers involved at the precinct level, at the county level, at the state level as well, because we're putting together our platform. We expect to have a big national platform fight this time. You know, some of the folks that are close to the nominee want to push some things in there that are not very holy. And so we're going to be pushing back on a lot of that stuff. So get involved with your county party, your local party, your county party, and the state party. Go to the convention, because we've got some tough races coming up at the convention as well, and where we've got some strong conservatives and we've got some moderates wanting to take the party in a different direction. Yeah. And so it's important to be involved at that level as well. Good.
Hey, guys, listen, I don't know, you might have a bad taste in your mouth about the medical field, but listen, there are great doctors out there. There's doctors that care about you. They care and they love their patients. And Robin has been a complete example of that. And it's not just Robin. It's his wife. It's his team. It's everyone that he surrounds himself with. So I know there's many doctors out there that have done the same. And just trust me, guys. search out these doctors. They're wonderful, wonderful, wonderful people, and not all of the medical field is on the governmental side. So, thank you guys for tuning in to I Fight What You Fear. I've hoped this has been a blessing for you. Go out there and do something great because it's inside of you. You're built with purpose, perfect
Amen.
design, and go out there and achieve it. You got it. God bless you. See you later.